Welcome. You're listening to Latin Waves with your hosts, Sylvia and Stuart Richardson. Latin Waves is more than just hot rhythms. This is a show about community, about creating a culture that is inclusive and based on fairness. Because everyone deserves dignity, respect, and has something to contribute. A new world is possible, and it all starts with us. I'm your host, Sylvia Richardson. This morning, I'm delighted to be speaking with Darren Lund. He is one of my favorite authors. His book that really brought his work to life for me was The Great White North, Exploring Whiteness, Privilege, and Identity in Education. Since then, I've read many articles. He's written over 300 articles. He's got a beautiful book on multicultural critical perspectives. So I'm delighted to have you on our program, Darren. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Sylvia. It's always great to talk with you.
In 2020, we heard, the tragic death of George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter movement spark. But in reality, Black Lives Matter was a movement that started long before George died. And likewise in Canada, Indigenous people have been mobilizing. It was not by lack of trying. I mean, I should point out the Indian Act not only forced them into segregation, but also restricted their eligibility for voting. It prohibited them from going to universities, from hiring lawyers. I mean, there were so many layers. But despite all that, we see the resilience of a people. And so what keeps you engaged and hopeful, and this critical hope that you speak of? When you look at your surroundings and you see the injustice and you see the structural and systematic oppression that crush in, but yet what makes you get up in those days when it seems really hard to do your work?
I think, because we need sources of hope and inspiration. And I mean, I see a lot of hope in the growing appetite for social justice knowledge and wisdom around seeking equity, and I like that corporations are reaching out to community activists and scholars to say, help us. we need, you've been doing this work for years. Community activists have been, fighting these fights for years. Help us, people that have more, power and more economic power, to try to get it right, to try to get it better. And I you can be a bit cynical, and rightly so, to think, okay, this is about bottom line. This is about they're feeling some pressure from shareholders, or they're feeling pressure from consumers. But that's okay. It's wherever the pressure is coming from. I hope for better outcomes. So maybe this is a time that we can rethink our policies. And this is a time that we can sit down with people that are sharing common interests. I was, recently invited to speak to people at Suncor, an energy company, around these uncomfortable conversations we need to have on social justice. The Alberta Family Mediation Society wants to talk about it. The Restorative Justice Society. There are people, all over that are saying, help us take these first steps. What do we not know that we need to know? And just another really promising, exciting one for me, very humbled to have been invited to speak at the University of Louisville, where Breonna Taylor was brutally murdered in her own apartment. And they're initiating, the University of Louisville is initiating a community or a symposium on how community engagement can help address racial justice. I just like to see all of these, groups who share common goals toward equity, toward social justice for all, coming together to say, we can learn from each other. Let's look at all of the things that are going well, look at all the sources of resistance, and what are some successes that we've had, and how can we continue to work together, both people in the mainstream and people whose lives are directly affected every day by these inequitable conditions.
We don't know what we don't know. Growing up in a war-torn country meant despair was evident. you bury friends and relatives on a daily basis, and you feel like this, you can be blown by the wind any second. And yet my family's attitude was that hopelessness was not on the menu. Hopelessness precedes disease, my mom would say. And so
Hmm.
you
Yeah.
just you just don't engage. And so she was always busy doing something, maybe making coffee for the funeral, maybe going on some inquiry, finding people who had been disappeared. There was always something, she was in it. And it didn't do very well for them. My father was murdered and my mother was left for dead. And yet I still
Yeah.
see the importance of her teaching. I see that we all die. We all will eventually die, and it won't matter how we die. Well, it does matter. It's of incredible
Yeah.
importance to others to survive us. But our life is finite, and so in many ways, I think that the gift of being alive is this gift of now, of engagement, of being able to create something that will serve generations to come, right? And so
Mm.
how we take that responsibility, I think, is key in how well we sleep, how well we feel with life. So I wonder how you invite your students to begin to take those steps, and to engage with what is hard, to sit through the pain, and to be able to see the gift of going through it with another group, with a group is suffering, and the gift of seeing something transform.
Yeah, I mean, it is that kind of an invitation, I think. I really like the idea of invitational learning, of inviting students along. And, it can't be, people can't be force fed or, hit over the head with things, but it does have to be powerful. And I really like the book, Is Everyone Really Equal? An Introduction to Key Concepts in Social Justice Education, written by Oslam Sensoy from Simon Fraser University, and Robin DiAngelo, who does a lot of work around white fragility and whiteness. But this book is wonderful for undergraduates and graduate students to get the language, to think about how they've been socialized, and to think about how social justice issues are really permeate all aspects of education. So that one for me is a good guidebook. It's like a handbook that gives us the language to start talking about what can be done. But I think the key too is finding all of these excellent authors that have been writing so well about it for years. George Day at the University of Toronto and his work on critical anti-racism, and Patrick Solomon, the late Patrick Solomon, Carl James from York University, Melinda Smith, who's now at University of Calgary, Carl Grant in the United States, and Jim Banks, James Banks, and all of these amazing scholars. Dwayne Donald, an Indigenous scholar at the University of Alberta, Verna St. Denis and the St. Denis, and so many others in Canada who's, are just such great mentors and such great scholars, people of color who've, not just lived the experiences, but who've theorized on them and who've done research on them and can help students, gain just a wealth of knowledge as they move forward with their own learning. So I can, I like to be maybe a facilitator or a conduit of something, and that, all I can try and be is a good ally and a good, I guess, yeah, guide for students. I'm still on this journey myself, so I still have an awful lot to learn and an awful lot to continue to unlearn, moving forward. So I find so many of these great scholars, and there are all kinds of up and coming scholars as well that are really easy to find.
One of the things that really filled me with hope is that last year, as the election results were revealed, there was 100,000 people that went through I guess went to Washington in protest, and there was this big news media about it, right? And to me,
Mm-hmm.
I thought, well, yeah, there was 100,000 people, but there was 26 million who participated in the Black Lives Matter movement. 26 million
Mm-hmm.
in the midst of pandemic. So to me, our numbers are bigger. Are the people who want social change and justice are growing in numbers, and we are the majority. It's just that we haven't yet changed the systems, the report on what we're doing, on what people are dreaming about. In Canada, we saw the Wet'suwet'en people unite with Indigenous people across Canada in protest of, the invasion of their territory. And, if the pandemic hadn't crossed, you would have heard news of how Indigenous people block the rails, and the economy was
Mm-hmm.
literally stopped by their social movements. So we are stronger than we think we are. And we are more powerful than we constantly are reminded in the media. So I think that the work of educating is also to recovering, to remembering our own power, of who we are and what we are able to create when we work together. So, what are some of the projects that have really sparked your imagination and fill you with hope as you engage with your students' community work?
Well, I know like Black Lives Matter hit Canada and during the pandemic, as you say, and it was powerful. We saw even in Calgary, which is fairly conservative in the heart of oil country and all of that. Quite a conservative province. Thousands and thousands of people take to the streets to stand in solidarity with Black people and African American people, and really fighting for the same kind of justice for them as for anyone. So I'm left very hopeful by that, by those kinds of large movements that we see. There's an appetite for. There also are all kinds of movements right now supporting public education and supporting our doctors and public medicine as our government is attacking them, cutting salaries, closing, forcing doctors out of the province. We've got all kinds of grassroots lobby groups, people coming together to say, no, we want a strong public medicine. We want strong public medicine. We don't want that privatized. And we don't want to see schools diminished and have only the elite get good education. Save Our Schools is a grassroots parent lobby group for keeping public education strong here in Alberta. I've seen another group emerge, Hakili, around community engagement in anti-racism and anti-oppression. So many that I can't even possibly know all their names, but just all kinds of really neat grassroots, and groups of LGBTQ students and teachers coming together to support a network across, Gay Straight Alliance network across the province, where we understand that, creating these sources of support for some creates a better society for all. It creates a safer learning environments. It creates more accessible institutions. So I think it behooves us all to find out what's already being organized in our communities and get on board however we can. It's a bit daunting because you can feel like, well, I don't even know the right language, or I don't know the right questions to ask yet. But that's where anyone in the activist community needs to be a lot more, I think, accepting and tolerant of people new to the new to the field, to say, your heart's in the right place. We can, guide you on this.
I love that you bring this aspect of compassion for ourselves and compassion for others, because we don't know what we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And in the Toltec tradition of the Mayan people, one of the the agreements is do not take things personal. And it's like we didn't invent, the structures of imperialism and colonization, but we are responsible for transforming them. And so that I
Hmm.
think is the difference. We don't have to feel guilty for the crimes of our ancestors, but we have to be responsible. And you've told me over the years different metaphors for this, and I always love to hear them and to share them with my audience. So, do you have a way that you teach your students about this?
Yeah, I mean that's a nice one that I learned from Carl James in Ontario. But he said, if you moved into a house and the furnace was broken, you wouldn't say, well, that happened before I got here. It's not my fault. I can't blame me for that. You would actually get together with the other people in the house and work on fixing that furnace. So, how Canada's the same. We all arrived here from somewhere, except for our Indigenous people. So we're arriving here from somewhere, and there are problems that predated our arrival, but we're here now, as you say. It's on us. Let's fix that furnace. Let's work together to fix it now. And a little bit of guilt isn't a bad thing either. I mean, sometimes it's like a bit of discomfort where you don't want paralyzing guilt. You don't want people to feel so badly that they're unable to work their way out of it. You want people to feel, maybe uncomfortable and guilty enough about their privilege that this isn't right. That something needs to change. That there's circumstances right now that are definitely in need of reform and renewal, and we can all play a role in that.
We cannot destroy what we love, and I think the first part perhaps is to fall in love with life. If we love life and we realize that our life is so derived from the air that we breathe, the land that grows our food, the waters that we drink, these are essential indigenous principles, that the water and the land really are the most precious things we have. And that I think has a lesson that has been completely beat out of most children in school, thinking of nature as resources, thinking of, you know, of life as commodity, right? So, so those who can afford it can have it, and those who cannot go without. Um, how do we not only keep this ethical perspective, of who we are and how we are embedded with life, um, centered to our struggles locally, but also a global ethic at the center of our local struggles?
That's a task. That's an ongoing task that I think it's like a perspective or a lens we need to have, right? Um, that as much as yes, our local struggles and struggles by marginalized people are very specific to this place, to this government, to these conditions, to this history. This parallels what's going on in oppressive situations everywhere. So we know that as much as yes, this is a unique situation here, what these people are facing currently, but or what we are facing currently, but to realize this is also going on in so many other places. So the if we see positive efforts here, if we see something, a breakthrough there, we can use that. We can use that momentum. We can use the knowledge and the collective energies and efforts and materials and resources and research to promote the same kinds of um, progress that we can see elsewhere. So I guess it is an ongoing global struggle, but it's bringing that global to the local and vice versa. I think going to keep sustaining the good work of people, that are gathered for this work.
I love food. I love
Me too.
music. And I love engaging through food and music because I think our struggles are also a celebration. In many ways, we have found each other. We have found each other, and to me, that's a cause for celebration. To not feel alone. Like I think that the biggest
Hmm.
harm of this pandemic, it's not the pandemic itself, but rather the imposed isolation and this sense of having to distance yourself from others. I think it's one thing to social
Hmm.
distance to prevent the spread of disease, and it's another thing to be completely alone, to try to insulate yourself, to in many ways we need to spread it to end it, right? Just like
Yeah.
a good cold, right? So I wonder, in closing, how do we engage in education as a form of celebration? How do we bring this indigenous practice of honoring what is, accepting, where we are, so we can set course in a different way, and celebrating our steps as we move along together, as we create together.
Hmm. It's essential, I think. You're so right. Like the humanity and the humanizing elements of education, I think, are crucial. And I really, I like teaching online. I see a lot of community building, a lot of solidarity and love and care with my students. But I think I miss the face to face classes, and I miss someone signing up to bring a new kind of food each week for our mid class break. Those are the moments, where good conversation happens and bonding, and likewise with activist groups, that come together and laughing together through the tears or crying together, or like a pride parade celebration where 50 or 100,000 people come together. What was unthinkable even 20 years ago is now a huge celebration in the community. So that has to be what we can still do it virtually for now, but we're looking forward to those moments where we can hug one another and just see the smiles on people's faces again. And I'm really really hopeful for almost more gratitude for those moments, that not taking any of this for granted, not taking just our ability to even meet, taking that. I think we have taken a lot of this for granted. And I hope that post-pandemic that we'll be even more grateful for those moments, for all of the people in our lives and all of the people that came before us, and realize that we're just all, as you say, we're on this temporary journey here, and the more work that we can do for the betterment and how we leave this place, I think that will be our legacy, and I look forward to it.
Is there a, I don't know, I have my own little practices. Sometimes when I'm feeling down, I have this beautiful book of Chinese proverbs. And one of my favorite ones is about this man who's being chased by a lion. And he runs, 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 and he gets to the cliff. And at the cliff, he's like, oh, the lion is just about to grab him when he jumps off the cliff and grabs onto this little vine. And he's hanging by one hand on the vine. And if he lets go of the vine, there's another lion waiting for him at the bottom. And as he's hanging there in this between attack, he notices a beautiful red plump strawberry. And holding on with his one hand, he just reaches up, grabs it, and eats it up. And, the whole time he's doing this, there's a little rat gnawing at his little vine. And so, the proverb is beautiful because it really talks about the lion behind the chasing you one is your past, right? We all have things in our past that we're being chased by, that we wish we hadn't done, that we can't let this sleep, whatever. And then the line on the bottom is your death. You will die one day. That lion will get you. But in between, you have this tiny little vine that's your life. And the white and the black rat, gnawing at your vine is your day and night. Every day you have so many hours of daylight and so many hours of night. And in between, you have the opportunity to either savor that strawberry that is your life or be completely consumed by the fear of losing your vine. So that keeps me going. Whenever I lose perspective, I go back to that and I think, yes, that happened. And now we're here. What's today? What can today offer, right? What can today This is a moment, right? We always have the opportunity to start over, to create something beautiful. So
I love that proverb. I think that's just a wonderful way to end this. Just reach out and take a big bite of that strawberry whenever you can.
thank you so much for all the beautiful ways you invite us to engage and all the beautiful ways that you write to discomfort us from our habits of being and to be in this moment, change agents to create the society we want to see. For people who want to access your work and engage with your books, how can they access your work?
You can just Google my name, Darren Lund, University of Calgary, and my website should have some of them, certainly. I'm on Twitter at Darren E. Lund. But really, I think, there's so many good authors out there. There's so many wonderful writers. It's really, really humbling to be in the presence of all of these folks that are so committed to their work and from their own perspectives, from their own specific focus, doing all of this. So I invite people to come on board, and certainly I'm very humbled by your kind words today. Thanks, Sylvia.
Thank you so much for being with us, Darren. Take
All
care.
right. You take care.
We've come to the end of our show, Latin Waves. Latin Waves is an internationally syndicated weekly program made available through campus and community stations and available out to the world at www.latinwavesmedia.com. Visit Latin Waves Media to hear previous shows, to access resources, or support our efforts towards social change via community project engagement. Thank you and bye for now.